The shrill voice captured in that 911 recording would later become one of my strongest pieces of evidence. "Someone has changed the locks on community property," she shouted into her phone, standing right on my front porch. "I demand officers be dispatched immediately." What HOA President Linda Garrison didn't realize was that I was standing just inside, listening, and preparing to make a very different call, one that would turn her little power trip into a full-blown nightmare. Just 3 weeks earlier, I had bought the old Henderson place. The property sat at the far edge of Maple Ridge Drive, right where the Sunset Meadows HOA's jurisdiction ended. The previous owner had lost the place to foreclosure, and I'd gotten it for a bargain, mainly because it needed serious renovation. What I hadn't expected was an HOA president knocking on my door on a Tuesday morning, holding what looked like an ancient brass key, like it was a badge of honor. "Excuse me," she said with an air of entitlement, like people usually just stepped aside when she spoke. "I'm here for the monthly inspection." She wore a crisp navy blazer and a gold HOA president pin that gleamed in the sun like it had been polished that morning. Her blonde hair was so carefully styled it didn't move in a breeze, and her smile never quite reached her eyes. "I think there's been a mix-up," I replied calmly, setting down my paint roller. "This is private property. I purchased it 3 weeks ago." Her smile slipped for just a second before returning with twice the artificial charm. "Young man, this house is part of the Sunset Meadows HOA. We have inspection rights over all homes in our community," she said. She raised a key like she was wielding royal authority. "This master key gives me access to every home under our oversight." I kept my tone professional, though I felt a flicker of amusement. "Ma'am, I've got all the closing paperwork inside. The property sits outside the HOA boundary. The survey makes that very clear." "I don't need to see any paperwork," she snapped, waving one manicured hand dismissively. "I've been the HOA president for 8 years. I know every property we control." She stepped forward, extending the key toward my front door. "If you'll excuse me—" "Ma'am," I interrupted, still polite but firm, "please step back. This is private property, and you do not have permission to enter." Her face turned crimson, clashing harshly with her coral lipstick. "How dare you speak to me that way? Do you know who I am?" "Linda Garrison, HOA president," I replied evenly, "but that doesn't give you authority over this house." Her finger jabbed in my direction, her voice climbing toward a shriek. "You will be hearing from our legal department. Nobody defies the HOA." With that, she spun on her designer heels and stormed off to her white Lexus, slamming the door so hard her HOA parking decal fluttered. I figured that was the end of it. I went back to painting my living room, savoring the quiet of owning a home outside the clutches of petty neighborhood politics. But I should have known better. People like Linda don't surrender power, they double down. Just after lunch, I heard a commotion outside. Peeking through the front window, I spotted the same white Lexus parked out front again. Linda was at my door, furiously jamming that brass key into the lock and twisting like mad. Her face had gone from red to deep purple, and she was muttering something I couldn't quite make out. I opened the door before she could break the lock. "Can I help you with something, Mrs. Garrison?" She jumped back like I'd zapped her, clutching her chest with performative flair. "You changed the locks," she accused, as though I'd just broken a sacred law. "That's against HOA bylaws. You're not allowed to change locks without board approval." "Mrs. Garrison," I said, patient but resolute, "as I mentioned earlier, this property is not part of your HOA. But for the record, these are the same locks that were on the house when I bought it." Her eyes narrowed to slits. "You're lying. This key has worked on this house for years. The previous owner knew the rules. He gave us access for inspections." "The previous owner lost the house in foreclosure," I reminded her. "Whatever arrangement you think you had ended with the bank taking ownership." That's when she whipped out her phone. "Fine," she hissed. "If you want to play games, we'll do this the hard way." She dialed 911 with theatrical purpose, shooting me a smug, triumphant glare. "Yes, hello," she said to the dispatcher. "I need police at this address immediately. There's a squatter in one of our HOA homes. He's changed the locks and refuses to leave." I stood there watching her, half amused, half amazed at the audacity. She rattled off my address to the 911 dispatcher with the conviction of someone who genuinely believed her own fiction. Yes, I'm the HOA president. I have full authority over this property. Please hurry. He seems unstable. As she kept up her dramatic performance, I quietly stepped back inside my home. If she wanted to weaponize emergency services, she wasn't the only one who could play that card. The difference? I had an edge she didn't see coming. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. 2 rings later, a familiar voice picked up. County Dispatch. Sarah speaking. Hey, Sarah, it's David Morrison, I said evenly. Looks like I got a bit of a situation unfolding at my new place on Maple Ridge. Sarah Martinez had been one of my closest friends since high school. She'd been working county dispatch for 5 years now and had earned a reputation as one of the sharpest in the department. David, I heard you bought a place out there. What's going on? I've got an HOA president on my porch claiming I'm squatting in my own home. I think she just made a false report to 911. Let me guess. Linda Garrison? Sarah said, her tone laced with recognition. White Lexus. Hair that looks like it's been shellacked into place. That's her, I confirmed. She's convinced the Sunset Meadows HOA controls my property, but I've got everything proving otherwise. Parcel number is 472-8916. I heard her typing fast on the other end. Okay, pulling it up? Yep, you're absolutely right. That lot sits outside Sunset Meadows jurisdiction. Actually, it's never been part of any HOA. Exactly what I tried telling her. But apparently she thinks owning a master key gives her the right to barge into my home. Sarah's tone shifted, still professional, but now threaded with concern. David, I'm showing a call just came in from your address. She's reporting you as a squatter and claiming HOA authority. Units are already en route. I figured as much, I said, glancing through the blinds. Linda was now pacing across my lawn, flailing her arms while still glued to her phone. I've got my deed, survey, and closing docs ready. Perfect. I'm updating the incident with the correct property info now. Officers Johnson and Pike are responding. I'll make sure they get the full context before they roll up. She paused, then added in a more personal tone. She's really claiming you're squatting in a house you legally bought? Apparently, her magic HOA key not working is proof of my criminal intent, I said dryly. She tried it this morning. I explained, again, that she had no authority here. Now we're doing this the hard way. Okay, I'm flagging the call as a possible false report and trespassing. They'll come in with that in mind. Just stay calm and keep your paperwork handy. Thanks, Sarah. Seriously, no problem. And David, you might want to invest in security cameras. Something tells me she's not done yet. As I ended the call, I saw Linda wrapping up her own. She now stood at the foot of my driveway, arms crossed, a self-satisfied smirk tugging at the corners of her mouth. She clearly expected to watch me get hauled off in handcuffs. I calmly collected my paperwork from the filing cabinet and stepped out to the porch. Within 10 minutes, 2 black and white cruisers rolled to a stop in front of my home. As soon as they parked, Linda sprang into action, rushing toward them like a stage actress in mid-performance. Officers! Thank goodness you're here, she cried, pointing at me like she just uncovered a fugitive. That man is trespassing on HOA property. But instead of marching up to confront me, both officers walked right past her. Mr. Morrison? Officer Johnson called out as he approached the steps. That's me, I replied, holding up my documents. Thanks for coming out. Behind them, Linda's jaw hit the metaphorical floor. Wait, what? Why are you talking to him? He's a squatter. Officer Pike turned toward her with measured professionalism. Ma'am, we need you to step back while we sort things out. But I'm the one who called, she insisted, her voice rising. I'm Linda Garrison, HOA president. We're aware, Mrs. Garrison, Officer Johnson said calmly. Now, please step aside. I handed over the documents, deed, survey, closing paperwork. Johnson reviewed them carefully, flipping through each page with practiced eye. Mr. Morrison, can you walk us through what happened? He asked. I explained everything. The unannounced visit that morning, the unauthorized attempt to use a so-called master key, and the false 911 report. I kept my tone measured, straightforward. No embellishment. Just facts. She seems to believe the HOA has control over my home, I said, pointing to the survey. But this clearly shows my parcel is outside their jurisdiction. Johnson nodded, tracing his finger along the survey lines. This is pretty clear, he said. Your property line ends here, he pointed to the edge of my lot, and Sunset Meadows begins just beyond. Approximately 50 feet down the road, Officer Johnson said, pointing to property boundary on my survey. That's impossible. Linda snapped, unable to hold back any longer. I have a master key. The previous owner gave us access. Officer Pike turned to her. Mrs. Garrison, do you have any documentation showing that your HOA has legal authority over this specific property? I don't need documentation, she huffed. I've been president for 8 years. I know every house in our community. But do you have legal documentation? Pike asked again, his tone patient but firm. Bylaws referencing this address? A signed agreement with the previous owner? Linda's face shifted through an impressive spectrum of reds. The key is proof enough. Why would I have it if we didn't have authority? Officer Johnson sighed and took a step forward. Mrs. Garrison, simply possessing a key doesn't give you the legal right to enter someone's home. Do you have permission from Mr. Morrison to be on his property? I don't need his permission, she shrieked. The volume made both officers instinctively take a step back. This is HOA property. Officer Johnson returned my documents and turned to face her fully. His tone was calm but authoritative. Ma'am, based on the property records and survey, this house is not under your HOA's jurisdiction. The homeowner has asked you to leave. You are currently trespassing. And, Officer Pike added, voice sharpening, you made a false report to 911, claiming Mr. Morrison was squatting. That's misuse of emergency services. The blood drained from Linda's face. Her confidence wavered for the first time, replaced by a quiet, stunned panic. But I'm the HOA president, she said, voice barely a whisper, as if the title itself should make everything disappear. That title doesn't grant you control over properties that aren't under your HOA's authority, Officer Johnson said. Now, you have two options. You can leave now with a formal warning, or you could be arrested for trespassing and filing a false report. Linda's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. She looked like a fish flopping out of water. This is ridiculous. I'll have your badges for this. Do you know who I am? I have influence in this community. Ma'am, Officer Pike said, his hand subtly drifting toward a citation book that could be interpreted as a threat against law enforcement. I strongly suggest you leave immediately. With trembling fingers, Linda clutched her useless brass key, like it could still save her. She turned to me, hissing, "This isn't over. The HOA has lawyers. We'll prove this property is ours." "You're welcome to try," I replied evenly. "But until then, you're not welcome on my property. Don't come back without my permission." Officer Johnson walked her to her Lexus, while Officer Pike began writing up the formal trespass warning. "Mr. Morrison," Pike said, "if she returns, give us a call right away. We'll have this on file." As Linda sped off, tires squealing for extra drama, I turned to the officers. "Thanks for your professionalism," I said sincerely. Officer Johnson gave a knowing smile. "Between you and me, this isn't our first call involving Mrs. Garrison. She seems to think being HOA president makes her sheriff of the neighborhood." Once they'd gone, I stood for a long moment on my porch, soaking in the calm. Then I locked my door, using my key, the only key that would ever open it again. 3 days later, an envelope from the Sunset Meadows HOA arrived. I opened it expecting bluster. Instead, I found a formal statement. Upon review of property records, the board of Sunset Meadows HOA acknowledges that parcel 472 to 8916 Maple Ridge Drive falls outside our jurisdiction. I had it professionally framed and hung it right next to my front door, a silent monument to how facts and documentation can shatter even the loudest power trips. But the real fallout came at the next HOA meeting. Word of Linda's 911 stun had spread like wildfire, faster than garden gossip in a summer drought. As she tried to call the meeting to order, homeowner after homeowner stood up demanding answers. How many properties had she wrongly claimed authority over? How often had she used that so-called master key? The vote to remove her was unanimous. Linda Garrison was officially stripped of her title as HOA president, effective immediately. She sat in stunned silence, eyes wide, lips moving but producing no sound, as her little empire crumbled around her. And the worst? It wasn't over. The board voted to audit her tenure. What they uncovered led to a $15,000 fine for misuse of HOA funds, plus several violations of state property law. 6 months later, a county judge ordered her to pay full restitution, plus legal fees. As the verdict was read, Linda's once impenetrable facade crumpled like tissue paper in the rain.